Ruth pressed her dead husband's shirt against her face and screamed into the fabric until her throat tore raw. 3 years. 3 winters alone. 3 chances at motherhood buried in the frozen ground behind the barn. The townspeople called her cursed. Maybe they were right. Then the dog heard something she didn't. Biscuit lifted her gray muzzle from the hearth and let out a low whine that cut through Ruth's grief like a blade through snow. Someone was at the door. If you want to know who's standing in that blizzard, subscribe to my channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Ruth dropped the shirt. Biscuit was already on her feet. Hackles raised that whine, turning into something deeper. Not a warning bark, something else. Something the old dog had never made before in all her 12 years. Ruth reached for the rifle above the mantel. Her hands shook. They always shook now, cold or fear, or just the trembling that came from too many nights alone. She couldn't tell anymore. The knock came again, weak, desperate. "Help!" A man's voice cracked and fading. "Please, my daughter." Ruth's finger found the trigger. Last spring, 2 drifters had come through. They'd laughed at her patched dress, stolen her only laying hen, left her crying in the mud. She'd learned. "I got a rifle," she called through the door, "and I know how to use it." "Ma'am." The voice broke on the word. "She's 7 years old. She ain't breathin' right. Please." Ruth closed her eyes, heard her father's voice dead these 15 years. "Hospitality ain't optional in a storm, Ruthie girl. It's what separates us from the wolves." She opened the door. The wind hit her first needles of ice that stole her breath. Then she saw him, tall man, broad-shouldered, clutching something against his chest. A child, small, still, lips blue as forget-me-nots. Behind him, a single horse stood with its head down, snow piling on its back, too exhausted to even shiver anymore. "She fell through ice," the man said. 3 miles back. Couldn't get her warm. Couldn't—" His voice cracked. "Please, ma'am, I'm beggin'." Ruth stepped aside. They crossed the threshold together, the man and his frozen child. Ruth slammed the door against the howling dark and turned to find him already kneeling by her fire, pulling wet clothes off the little girl with hands that shook worse than Ruth's ever had. "Blankets," Ruth said. "Not a question." "Behind you on the chair, my mama's quilt." The man grabbed it without looking, wrapped it around the child, and held her against his chest like he could pour his own warmth directly into her bones. Ruth put water on to boil, found the hot stones she used for her own cold nights, wrapped them in cloth, brought them close. "What's her name?" Ruth asked. "Eleanor. Ellie." The man's voice was raw. "She's all I got left." Ruth knelt beside them. The girl's face was pale as candle wax. Her chest rose and fell, but barely. Too slow, too shallow. "She needs to be warmer than that quilt can make her," Ruth said. "Body heat, skin to skin." The man looked at her, desperate, confused. "Take off your wet shirt," Ruth said. "Hold her against you direct. I'll pile blankets over both of you." He didn't hesitate. Stripped off his frozen coat, his soaked shirt revealing a chest marked with old scars and newer bruises. Ruth noticed but didn't ask. She helped him rewrap. Ellie helped him settle against the hearth with the child pressed to his bare skin, then piled every blanket she owned over them both. "Now we wait," Ruth said. "And pray," the man added. Ruth hadn't prayed in 3 years. Not since she'd buried her last hope in that frozen ground. But she nodded anyway. "And pray." The hours crawled by like wounded things. Ruth kept the fire burning high. Boiled water for tea the man couldn't drink. Checked the girl's pulse again and again, feeling that thread-thin flutter against her fingers. The man didn't move, didn't sleep. Just held his daughter and watched her face like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. Because it was. Ruth understood that kind of love. She'd felt it once for children who never drew breath. "She's warming up," Ruth said finally. "Pulse is stronger." The man let out a sound, not a word, just breath that had been held too long. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you, ma'am." "Ruth, my name's Ruth McAllister." "Samuel." He paused. "Sam Mercer." Ruth nodded, didn't push for more. A man riding alone with a child in a February blizzard, he had his reasons. She had no right to them. "There's stew on the stove," she said. "When you're ready." "I can't move. Can't let her go." "I know." Ruth stood. "I'll bring it to you." She ladled stew into a chipped bowl. The man ate one-handed, never loosening his grip on his daughter. Biscuit settled at his feet, which surprised Ruth. The old dog didn't take to strangers. But then Biscuit had always been a better judge of character than any human Ruth knew. Near midnight, the girl stirred. Ruth saw at first a flutter of eyelids, a small hand clenching in the blanket. She touched Sam's shoulder, and he looked down at his daughter like a man watching a miracle. "Ellie. Ellie, sweetheart. Can you hear me?" The girl's eyes opened. Blue. The brightest blue Ruth had ever seen, like summer sky trapped in a child's face. Ellie looked at her father, then at Ruth, then at Biscuit, who had lifted her head at the movement. She didn't speak. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just breath. Just silence. Sam's face crumpled. "It's all right, baby girl. You don't gotta talk. You're safe now. Pa's got you." Ellie's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her face against her father's chest and cried without sound, her small body shaking with sobs that made no noise at all. Ruth turned away, busied herself with the fire, gave them privacy for a grief she didn't understand but recognized. Whatever had stolen this child's voice, it wasn't the cold. Jarmai. Dawn came gray and grudging. The storm still raged outside, snow piling against the windows, wind screaming around the corners of the cabin. Ruth had slept in her chair, waking every hour to check the fire check. The girl checked the man who never once closed his eyes. Now she stood at her small stove making biscuits from her dwindling flour. The last of her coffee grounds went into the pot. She'd worry about tomorrow when tomorrow came. "Ma'am Ruth," Sam's voice was hoarse, "I want to thank you proper." "You already did." "No, I mean—" He shifted, careful not to wake Ellie, who had finally fallen into true sleep. "I know what it costs to take in strangers. I know you got no reason to trust us." Ruth cracked an egg into her batter. "You got a child. That's reason enough. Not for most folks. I ain't most folks." She felt him watching her, felt the weight of questions he wasn't asking. She had questions of her own about the scars on his chest, the bruises on his ribs, the way his eyes kept darting to the window like he expected something to come through it. But questions could wait. The storm couldn't. 3 days, Ruth said, not turning around. "Maybe 4 before the trail's clear. You're welcome to stay till then." "We got money. I can pay." "Don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" Ruth turned, met his eyes for the first time in full daylight. They were dark, those eyes, dark and deep and carrying something heavy. "That fence out back is half collapsed, barn doors hanging by one hinge, wood piles near gone." She shrugged. "You want to pay with your hands." Sam nodded slowly. "Fair enough." "More than fair. I'm getting the better end of this deal." Ruth turned back to her biscuits. "Now hush up and let me cook." The girl woke hungry. That was a good sign, Ruth knew. A body fighting to live needed fuel. She gave Ellie the biggest biscuit, slathered it with the last of her plum preserves, and watched the child eat like she'd never seen food before. Ellie still didn't speak, but her eyes followed Ruth everywhere, watching her move around the cabin, watching her stir the fire, watching her hands as they worked. "She likes you," Sam said quietly. "She don't know me." Kids know things. He looked at his daughter with that desperate love that made Ruth's chest ache. She ain't let anyone close since we left home. Ruth didn't ask what home meant, didn't ask why they'd left it. How long? She asked instead. How long since she talked? Sam's jaw tightened. 18 months. Since her mama died. The words hit Ruth like a physical blow. She knew that kind of silence. She'd lived it herself after her father passed. After each baby she'd lost. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. Wasn't your doing. Still sorry, for both of you. Sam looked at her, then really looked like he was seeing her for the first time. Ruth felt naked under that gaze, felt seen in a way she hadn't been in years. She turned away first. Storm's still bad, she said. But I gotta check on the goats. They'll be needin' feed. I'll come with you. You should stay with your girl. She's sleepin' again. Sam was already standing, moving toward the door. And I don't like the idea of you out there alone. Ruth wanted to argue. She'd been alone for 3 years. She didn't need a man's protection. But there was something in his voice, something that made her swallow her pride and nod. All right then, bundle up. It's mean out there. The barn was 100 steps from the cabin. In the blizzard it felt like 100 miles. Ruth fought through snow up to her thighs, Sam beside her, the wind tearing at their clothes like it wanted to strip them down to bone. She could barely see the barn door through the white chaos. But they made it, pushed inside, pulled the door shut against the storm. The goats bleated their relief. 6 of them huddled together for warmth, their breath fogging the air. Ruth moved among them automatically, checking hooves, checking udders, forking hay into their trough. Sam watched her work. You know what you're doing, he said. Should hope so. Been doing it alone for 3 years. Your husband, dead. Ruth didn't look up. Tree fell on him up in the timber lot. Killed him instant, they said. Small mercy. I'm sorry. Don't be. Wasn't your doing. She echoed his own words back at him, and when she looked up, she saw him almost smile. It transformed, his face softened. The hard lines eased the shadows under his eyes. Ruth looked away, fast. Dangerous, that smile. Dangerous the way it made her feel. You do this every day? Sam asked. All of it. The goats, the firewood, the everything. Someone's gotta. And no one helps you. No neighbors. No kin. Ruth laughed. It came out bitter. Nearest neighbors 5 miles down the valley. Old man Moses. He ain't been up here since last spring. As for kin, she shrugged. Ain't got none. Mama died birthin' me. Daddy raised me alone. Now he's gone too. So you're alone. I just said that. No, I mean, Sam stepped closer, not threatening, just present. You're alone, and you still took us in. Still risked your supplies, your safety for strangers. Ruth met his eyes. What else was I gonna do? Let a child freeze on my porch? Some would. Then some ain't worth the air they breathe. Sam stared at her. Long, steady. You're something else, Ruth McAllister. I'm just a widow trying to get through another winter. She turned back to her goats. Now quit jawing and help me carry this milk back to the cabin before it freezes solid. The days blurred together. Snow, wind, the endless howl of February trying to kill everything that lived. Ruth and Sam fell into a rhythm. She cooked, he worked. She tended the goats, he mended the fence. She read to Ellie from her mama's old book of poetry. He listened from across the room like the words were water in a desert. Ellie didn't speak, but she started to move, started to help. She gathered eggs from the henhouse with solemn concentration. She brushed Biscuit until the old dog's coat shone. She set the table for 3 without being asked. And always, always, her eyes followed Ruth. She's attached to you, Sam said one evening, watching his daughter curl up beside Ruth on the small settee biscuit at their feet. "She's attached to warmth and safety," Ruth corrected. "I'm just the one providing it." "No, it's more than that." Sam's voice was soft. "She ain't let anyone touch her in 18 months. Not my sister, not my mother, not anyone. But she lets you." Ruth looked down at the child pressed against her side. Ellie's eyes were closed, her breathing slow and even. One small hand clutched the fabric of Ruth's dress like it was an anchor in a storm. Something cracked in Ruth's chest, something that had been frozen for a very long time. "I can't have children," she heard herself say. "3 times I tried. 3 times I buried 'em before they ever drew breath. Doc says it's something wrong inside me, says I ain't built for motherin'." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "Doc's wrong," he said finally. Ruth looked up. Tears she hadn't felt coming were blurring her vision. "This," Sam gestured to Ellie, to Ruth, to the whole warm cabin. "This is motherin'. The holdin', the readin', the just bein' there. That's what a mama does." "She ain't mine." "She could be." The words hung in the air between them. Ruth couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I ain't said a thing I don't mean in 38 years. Ain't about to start now." Ruth closed her eyes, felt Ellie's warmth against her side, felt Sam's gaze on her face. "You don't know me," she said. "I know enough. You don't know what the town says about me, what they think. Don't care. They call me cursed, barren. Say I drove my husband to his grave with my empty womb. Say I ain't worth—" "Ruth." Sam's voice cut through her spiral. "Look at me." She opened her eyes. He had crossed the room, was kneeling in front of her, close enough to touch but not touching, respecting her space even as he invaded it. "I don't know what those people said," he told her. "And I don't care. What I know is this. I watched you save my daughter's life. Watched you give up your only blankets, your last coffee, your mama's quilt for strangers you had every right to turn away. I watched you hold a child who ain't held anyone in 18 months, and I watched her hold you back." His voice dropped. "That ain't cursed, Ruth. That's blessed. Anyone who says different is a damn fool." Ruth's tears spilled over. She couldn't stop them. "Why are you running?" she asked. "What are you running from?" Sam's face changed, closed. The warmth that had been in his eyes flickered and went out like a candle in a draft. "Don't ask me that." "Why not?" "Because if I tell you, I gotta leave, and if I leave—" He looked at Ellie. "She won't survive it, not again." Ruth understood. Whatever secret he carried, it was dangerous, and he was trying to protect her by keeping her ignorant. But Ruth had never been good at staying ignorant. "We'll talk about it," she said. "Tomorrow, when the storm breaks." Sam nodded slowly. "Tomorrow." He stood, walked back to his chair by the fire, but his eyes stayed on Ruth and Ellie, and in them Ruth saw something she hadn't seen in 3 years. Hope. The storm broke on the 4th day. Ruth woke to silence the eerie absence of wind that meant the blizzard had finally exhausted itself. She rose quietly, not wanting to wake Ellie, who had taken to sleeping in Ruth's bed like she belonged there. Sam was already awake, standing at the window. His face was hard in the pale dawn light. "Trails will be passable by noon," he said without turning. Ruth's stomach dropped. "You're leaving." "We've imposed long enough." "You ain't imposed." "Ruth." He turned. His eyes were red. He hadn't slept. "I told you. There's things I can't explain. Things that make it dangerous for you if we stay." "Then explain 'em." "I can't." "You can. You just won't." Ruth stepped closer. "I opened my door to you. I fed your daughter. I held her while she cried. I think I've earned some truth." Sam's hands fisted at his sides. She could see the war on his face, the need to tell, fighting against the need to protect. "I was a judge," he said finally. Federal court out of Denver. I sent a man to hang, a bad man, a killer, but he had brothers. Ruth's blood went cold. They came for you. They came for my wife. Sam's voice broke. Shot her down in our own parlor. Ellie saw it. She was hiding under the bed and she saw everything. Oh, God. I killed 2 of them, but the third got away. He's been hunting us ever since. That's why we're running. That's why I can't stay. Sam's eyes met hers. Because if he finds me here, he'll kill you too. And I can't. I won't be the reason another good woman dies. Ruth should have been afraid. Should have told him to take his daughter and his danger and get out. Instead, she stepped closer. Close enough to touch. How long you been running? 18 months. And has running helped? Has it kept her safe? Sam flinched. No. Then maybe it's time to stop running. Ruth's hand found his. His fingers were cold. She warmed them between her palms. Maybe it's time to stand. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I spent 3 years alone on this mountain waiting to die. Waiting for the cold or the loneliness or just the giving up to finally take me. She squeezed his hand. Then you knocked on my door. And for the first time since Henry died, I remembered what it felt like to be alive. Ruth, I ain't asking you to love me. I ain't asking for promises. I'm just asking you to stay. One more day. Then another after that. Until running don't seem like the only choice anymore. Sam stared at her. The war in his eyes was still there, but something else was there too. Something desperate and hungry and terrified. If I stay, he whispered, and they come, then we'll face them together. You could die. I could die anyway. Could slip on the ice tomorrow and break my fool neck. Could get the fever. Could just stop waking up one morning like old Moses always says he will. Ruth lifted her chin, lifted her. I'd rather die fighting for something than wasting away waiting for nothing. Sam was silent for a long moment. Then he did something Ruth didn't expect. He laughed. It was a broken sound, more sob than humor, but it was real. He pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her, held her tight enough to hurt. You're crazy, he said into her hair. You know that, absolutely crazy. Maybe, Ruth admitted. But I'm still breathing. And so are you. And so is that little girl in there who needs a mama and a home and a place to stop being scared. Sam pulled back, looked at her, really looked. One more day, he said. One more day. It was enough. For now. They didn't notice Ellie watching from the doorway. They didn't see the way the child's face changed, the hope blooming in those summer blue eyes, the first real expression she'd shown in 18 months. And they didn't hear her whisper so soft, even Biscuit barely caught it. Home. But Ruth felt it. Later, when she turned and found Ellie standing there, arms open, waiting. She scooped the child up and held her close, and over Ellie's shoulder she met Sam's eyes. This was dangerous. This was foolish. This was probably going to get them all killed. But for the first time in 3 years, Ruth McAllister didn't care. She had something worth dying for. The knock came 3 hours later, not at the door this time, on the window. 3 sharp raps that made Biscuit bark and Sam reach for the rifle Ruth hadn't known he was carrying. Ruth moved to the glass, peered through the frost. A man stood in the snow, old, gray-bearded, bundled in furs. Moses, Ruth breathed. She opened the door to her only neighbor, a hermit who never came down from his own ridge except when something was wrong. Something was very wrong. You got trouble coming, girl, Moses said, not bothering with hello. His eyes flicked past her to Sam, to Ellie, back to Ruth. 3 riders came through town yesterday, asking questions, showing a picture. His weathered face was grim. Picture looked a lot like your guest there. Sam's face went white. How far behind you? Half a day, maybe less if they push hard. Ruth's hands went cold. She looked at Sam, at Ellie who had pressed herself against Ruth's leg, at Biscuit hackles rising at the scent of fear in the room. "Then we got half a day to get ready," she said. Sam shook his head. "No, we gotta run. I gotta, run where?" Ruth cut in. "Into a blizzard's leavings with a child who nearly died 4 days ago on a horse that's half-starved." She grabbed his arm. "You run now, you die on that mountain. And so does she. If I stay, you die here." "Maybe." Ruth lifted her chin. "But at least I'll die standing." Moses cleared his throat. "Hate to interrupt, but the lady's got a point. Them riders ain't gonna give up just 'cause you keep movin'. But they might give up if movin' ain't an option no more." Sam's eyes darted between them. Ruth could see the calculation happening, the desperate math of a father trying to save his daughter. "We can't fight 3 men," he said. "You can't." Moses agreed. "But you ain't alone, not anymore." The old man pulled back his furs to reveal the hunting rifle slung across his back, the long knife at his hip. "I'm old," Moses said. "Mean. And I ain't got nothing left to lose. But that little girl there?" He nodded at Ellie. "She's got everything, and I'll be damned if I let some bounty-hunting scum take that away." Ruth felt tears prick her eyes. Moses had never even spoken to her directly before. Just nodded from a distance, kept to himself, let her do the same. And now he was ready to die for her. "We need a plan," she said. Sam looked at her, at Moses, at his daughter who stood silent and watchful, those blue eyes taking in everything. Then he nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's make one." They had half a day to prepare. 3 guns, 1 old man, 1 desperate father, 1 woman who had spent 3 years waiting to feel alive again. And outside, coming closer with every hour, 3 men who would kill them all without a second thought. Ruth didn't know if they would survive, but for the first time in 3 years, she knew she wanted to. Moses spread his hand-drawn map across Ruth's kitchen table, the paper yellow and cracked with age. His gnarled finger traced the trail up the mountain. "They'll come this way," he said. "Only path wide enough for horses in winter. Switchbacks slow 'em down, but it also means we can see 'em coming from a mile off." Sam leaned over the map, his jaw tight. "How many shots you got?" "Enough. Question is, can you still shoot straight?" "I was a judge, not a soldier." "That ain't what I asked." Sam's hand went to the scar on his chest. Ruth had seen it when he'd held Ellie that first night. A puckered line just below his collarbone. Bullet wound, old but ugly. "I can shoot," Sam said quietly. "I've had practice." Moses grunted. Satisfied or skeptical, Ruth couldn't tell. "What about me?" she asked. Both men looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "You ain't fightin'," Sam said. "The hell I ain't. This is my land, my home." "Ruth. Don't you Ruth me, Samuel Mercer." She planted her hands on the table. "I've shot wolves off my goats. I've killed rattlers in my henhouse. I've put down a horse with a broken leg because there wasn't no one else to do it." Her voice hardened. "You think I can't point a rifle at a man who wants to hurt that little girl?" Sam stared at her. Something shifted in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or fear. "You ever killed a man before?" Moses asked. "No. It ain't like killing a horse." "I reckon not." Ruth lifted her chin. "But I'll do what needs doing, same as I always have." Moses looked at Sam. Sam looked at Moses. Some silent communication passed between them. "All right," Sam said finally. "But you stay inside. You're our last line. If they get past us, they won't get past you." "If they do," Sam pressed, "you take Ellie and you run. There's a root cellar under the barn. Trapdoors hidden under the hay in the back stall. You hide there until it's over." Ruth wanted to argue, but she saw his face, saw the terror beneath the calm. He wasn't trying to sideline her. He was trying to save her. "All right," she said. "Last line." Sam's shoulders dropped an inch. Relief. "Now," Moses said. "Let's talk about where to put me." They worked through the morning. Moses took position on the ridge above the cabin, hidden behind a rock outcropping with a clear view of the trail. Sam positioned himself at the barn, where he could cover the approach and retreat to the cabin if needed. Ruth stayed inside with Ellie, the rifle across her knees, watching through the window. The child hadn't left her side since Moses arrived, hadn't made a sound. But her small hand gripped Ruth's skirt like a lifeline, and her eyes tracked every movement in the cabin. "You scared?" Ruth asked quietly. Ellie nodded. "Me too." Ruth pulled the girl onto her lap. "But being scared don't mean being weak. It means you got something worth protectin'." Ellie looked up at her. Those summer blue eyes were too old for a 7-year-old, too knowing. "Your pa's gonna keep you safe," Ruth said. "And so am I. Whatever happens." Ellie's lips moved. No sound came out, but Ruth could read the word. Promise, promise. The child buried her face in Ruth's shoulder. Ruth held her tight and watched the snow-covered trail and waited for the wolves to come. Sam came back inside as the sun began to drop. "Moses is set," he said. "I reinforced the barn door, blocked the back window with hay bales." He paused. "How is she?" Ruth looked down at Ellie, who had finally fallen asleep in her arms. "Tired, scared, but holding on. Like her mama." Sam's voice cracked. "Like her mama used to." He crossed to them, knelt down, brushed a strand of hair from his daughter's face with a gentleness that made Ruth's heart ache. "Clara was brave," he said softly. "Braver than me. When they came for us, she pushed Ellie under the bed, told her to be quiet no matter what. Then she walked out to face him alone." Ruth's throat tightened. "She saved her. She died for her." Sam's hand trembled against his daughter's cheek. "And Ellie saw it all. Heard her mama fall. Heard them tearing the house apart looking for us. She stayed under that bed for 6 hours, Ruth. 6 hours not making a sound, her mama's blood soaking through the floorboards above her." Tears burned Ruth's eyes. She understood now. The silence, the fear. The way Ellie flinched at sudden noises, clung to safety wherever she found it. "That's why she don't talk," Ruth whispered. "Doc in Denver said it's her mind protecting itself. Said one day she might speak again when she feels safe enough." Sam looked up at Ruth. "She ain't felt safe in 18 months. Not until now. Not until you." Ruth couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "If something happens to me tomorrow," Sam said, "I need you to take her. Get her away from here. Give her a life. Nothing's gonna happen to you. Ruth, nothing's gonna happen." She grabbed his hand. "You hear me? We didn't find each other just to lose it all now. That ain't how this story ends." Sam stared at her. The firelight caught the tears on his face. "How does it end?" he asked. "With that little girl calling me Mama," Ruth said. "With you sitting on this porch every evening, watching the sun go down. With us growing old together on this mountain surrounded by grandchildren, we'll spoil rotten." Her voice broke. "That's how it ends, Samuel Mercer. And I won't accept nothing less." Sam leaned forward, his forehead pressed against hers. "You really are crazy," he whispered. "Maybe, but I'm your crazy now, so you better not die on me." He laughed, that broken, beautiful sound she was starting to love. "Yes, ma'am." Night fell heavy and cold. Ruth couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin made her jump. Every gust of wind sounded like hoofbeats. Sam sat by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the darkness. Ellie slept fitfully on Ruth's bed, Biscuit curled at her feet. "You should rest," Sam said without turning. "Can't." "Try." "I said I can't." Ruth moved to stand beside him. "My mind won't stop. Thinking about tomorrow. Thinking about everything. How strange this is. A week ago I was alone, ready to give up. And now, she shook her head. Now I got more to lose than I've had in years. Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. I never planned this, he said. Never planned to feel anything again. After Clara died, I thought that part of me was dead too. The part that could love. And now, he turned to look at her. In the dim light, his eyes were dark and deep and full of something that made Ruth's breath catch. Now I'm scared as hell, he admitted. Because losing you would break me worse than losing her, and I don't even know how that's possible. I barely know you. Sometimes knowing don't matter. Ruth squeezed his hand. Sometimes you just feel it, like recognizing something you've been looking for your whole life. Is that how you feel? That's exactly how I feel. She moved closer. Like I've been waiting for that knock on my door for 34 years. Like every bad thing that happened, Mama dying. Daddy going, Henry the babies, all of it was just leading me here. To this moment. To you. Sam's hand came up to cup her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone, gentle as a whisper. If we survive tomorrow, he said, I'm gonna marry you. Ruth's heart stopped. That a proposal? That's a promise. His eyes burned into hers. I ain't got a ring. Ain't got nothing to offer but trouble and a broken little girl and a past that might get us all killed. But I swear to God, Ruth McAllister, if you'll have me. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't polite. It was desperate and hungry, and full of every fear and hope they'd been holding back since that first night. His arms came around her, pulled her close, and for one perfect moment, there was no danger. No tomorrow, no world outside this cabin. Just them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ruth pressed her hand against his chest, felt his heart hammering beneath her palm. I'll have you, she said. Trouble and all. Sam smiled. A real smile. The first she'd seen. Then let's make sure we live long enough to make it official. Dawn came too fast. Ruth woke to Biscuit's low growl. The old dog was at the window, hackles raised, teeth bared. Sam was already on his feet, rifle in hand. They're here, he said. Ruth's blood went cold. She moved to the window, looked out at the trail below. 3 riders. Dark shapes against the snow. Moving slow, careful, their breath steaming in the morning cold. Get Ellie, Sam said. Keep her away from the windows. Ruth ran to the bed, scooped up the sleeping child. Ellie woke, confused, saw Ruth's face, and went still, understanding without words. It's all right, baby, Ruth whispered. We're gonna be fine. I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? Ellie nodded. Good girl. Ruth carried her to the back corner of the cabin, the spot farthest from any window. You stay here. Don't move. Don't make a sound no matter what you hear. Just like before. Can you do that? Ellie's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But she nodded again. I love you, Ruth said. The words came out before she could stop them, before she could wonder if it was too soon. I love you, Ellie, and I'm going to come back for you. I promise. She pressed a kiss to the child's forehead and stood. Sam was at the door watching her. Ready? He asked. No. Ruth picked up her rifle. But that ain't gonna stop me. The first shot came from the ridge. Moses's rifle cracked through the morning air like thunder. One of the riders jerked, tumbled from his horse, lay still in the snow. The other 2 scattered, diving for cover behind the tree line. Got one, Sam breathed. 2 left. Return fire peppered the ridge. Ruth heard Moses curse, heard him shift position. Still alive, still fighting. They're gonna try to flank us, Sam said. One'll keep Moses busy, the other'll circle around. The barn. Yeah. His jaw tightened. I gotta go. If they get to the barn, they can burn us out. Go. I've got the cabin. Sam grabbed her face, kissed her hard and fast. Don't die, he said. Same to you. Then he was gone, slipping out the back door into the snow. Ruth was alone. She moved to the window, rifle raised, and waited. Minutes crawled by like hours. Gunfire echoed across the mountain. Sporadic, controlled. Moses and Sam both still fighting. Ruth's hands shook on the rifle. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure anyone outside could hear it. Biscuit growled again, low, urgent. Ruth spun toward the sound. The back window. A shadow moved beyond the frost-clouded glass. Man-shaped, getting closer. Ruth raised her rifle. The window shattered inward. A man came through, big and bearded, pistol in hand. He saw Ruth and grinned. "Well now," he said. "What do we have here?" Ruth fired. The kick nearly knocked her off her feet. The shot went wide, splintering the wall beside the man's head. He flinched, then laughed. "That the best you got, sweetheart?" He lunged for her. Ruth swung the rifle like a club, caught him across the jaw. He staggered, cursed, grabbed the barrel, and wrenched it from her hands. "Feisty little thing, ain't ya?" He backhanded her. Stars exploded across her vision. "Gonna enjoy this." Biscuit attacked. 12 years old and half blind, but the dog launched herself at the man's leg with all the fury she had left. Teeth sank into flesh. The man screamed, kicked, sent Biscuit flying across the room. Ruth heard the old dog hit the wall, heard her whimper, heard nothing after. "Damn mutt," the man snarled. He turned back to Ruth, blood dripping from his calf. "Now where were we?" Ruth scrambled backward. Her hand found the fireplace poker. Cold iron, heavy. The man raised his pistol. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just tell me where the judge and his brat are hiding, and maybe I'll make it quick." "Go to hell!" He cocked the pistol. A small voice cut through the cabin. "Mama." Ruth's heart stopped. Ellie stood in the corner, eyes wide, mouth open, speaking for the first time in 18 months. "Mama, no!" The man's attention snapped to the child. His grin widened. "Well, well. There's the little princess. Your daddy's been real hard to catch, sweetheart. But the game's over now." He pointed the gun at Ellie. Ruth moved. She didn't think, didn't plan. Just threw herself between the gun and the child poker raised, screaming something that wasn't words. The gun fired. Pain exploded in Ruth's shoulder. She fell, poker clattering from her grip. The man stood over her, smoke curling from his pistol. "Stupid woman," he said. "Dying for someone else's kid." "She's mine." Ruth's voice came out wet, weak. "She's mine." The man shook his head, raised the gun for the final shot. The cabin door exploded inward. Sam came through like vengeance made flesh. His rifle was gone. Just his hands, his fury, his desperate love. He hit the bearded man at full speed. They crashed through the remains of Ruth's kitchen table. Fists flew, bones cracked. The pistol skittered across the floor. Ruth tried to move. The pain in her shoulder screamed. But she had to get to Ellie, had to protect her. She dragged herself across the floor, leaving a trail of blood on the wooden boards. Reached the corner, pulled Ellie into her arms. "Don't look, baby," she whispered. "Don't look." But Ellie was looking. At her father. At the man who'd killed her mother's murderers. At the savage violence of survival. A crack. A scream. Then silence. Sam stood over the bearded man's body, chest heaving, knuckles bloody. He looked at Ruth, at the blood spreading across her shirt. "Ruth?" "I'm all right." She wasn't, but she would be. "Ellie's safe. That's what matters." Sam crossed to them in 2 strides, fell to his knees, pulled them both into his arms. "It's over," he said. "It's over." But Ruth knew it wasn't. There'd been 3 men. Moses had killed 1. Sam had killed this one. 1 was still out there. Moses found them like that, huddled together on the bloody floor. The old man's face was grim, his arm hanging limp at his side. "Third one ran," he said. "Horse took a bullet, but he made it into the trees. Couldn't follow." Sam's body went rigid. "He'll come back. Bring more." "Maybe." Moses looked at the dead man on the floor. "Or maybe he'll decide this territory ain't worth dying for. Bounty hunters are cowards at heart. When the price gets too high, they find easier prey. And if he doesn't, then we'll be ready." Moses's old eyes found Ruth's face. "But right now we got more pressing concerns. She needs a doctor." Sam looked down at Ruth, at the blood soaking through her dress. "I'll ride to town," he said. "Get Doc Whitmore." "No." Ruth grabbed his arm. "Don't leave. Don't leave us. Ruth, you're hurt." "I've been hurt before. I can wait." She looked at Moses. "You know medicine. Field doctoring at least. I've seen the scars on your hands." Moses hesitated, then nodded slowly. "War taught me some things. I can get the bullet out, stop the bleeding, but it's gonna hurt like hellfire." "Do it." Sam's face was anguished. "Ruth, I ain't letting you ride into town alone. Not with one of them still out there. Not when Ellie needs you here." She squeezed his hand. "We stay together. All of us. That's how we survive." Sam looked at her for a long moment. Then he leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. "You're the stubbornest woman I've ever met. You proposed to me. Too late for regrets now." Despite everything, he laughed. Moses worked while Sam held Ruth down. The bullet had gone through, which Moses said was good. Less digging. But cleaning the wound, stitching it closed, that was agony beyond anything Ruth had ever known. She screamed into Sam's shoulder, bit down on the leather strap Moses gave her, tasted blood and salt and iron. Through it all, Ellie sat beside her, holding her hand, stroking her hair. "Mama," the child whispered over and over. "Mama, mama, mama." Like a prayer, like a promise. When it was finally over, Ruth lay shaking and sweating on her bed, wrapped in bandages, too weak to move. Sam sat beside her, Ellie in his lap. "Sleep," he said. "I'll keep watch. The body. Moses is handling it. Sleep, Ruth." She wanted to argue, but her eyes were already closing. The last thing she saw was Ellie's face, those summer blue eyes watching her with something that looked like worship. The last thing she felt was Sam's hand in hers. The last thing she heard was Ellie's voice, small but strong. "I love you, Mama Ruth." She smiled and let the darkness take her. Ruth dreamed of her mother. Not as she'd imagined her. Ruth had never known her, only seen the single photograph her father kept on the mantel. But in the dream, her mother was warm and solid and real, holding Ruth the way Ruth had held Ellie. "You did good, baby girl," her mother said. "You did real good." "I don't know what I'm doing," Ruth admitted. "I'm scared." "Course you are. Love's always scary, but it's worth it." Her mother's face was soft, kind. "You got a family now, Ruthie. A man who'd die for you. A child who needs you. Don't let fear steal that away." "What if I fail them?" "Then you fail trying. That's all any of us can do." Her mother pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Now wake up, baby. They're waiting for you." Ruth opened her eyes. Morning light. Her cabin. Sam asleep in the chair beside her bed. Ellie curled in his lap. She was alive. They were alive. And somewhere outside, Biscuit was barking. Sam jerked awake at the sound. "What? Biscuit!" Ruth sat up too fast. Pain lanced through her shoulder. "She's alive." They found the old dog on the porch, battered and limping but standing. Her tail wagged weakly when she saw them. "Tough old girl," Moses said from the doorway. "Like her owner." Ruth knelt down, ignoring the fire in her shoulder, and wrapped her arms around her dog. "You saved me," she whispered into Biscuit's fur. You brave, stupid, wonderful dog. Biscuit licked her face, whimpered, settled her gray head against Ruth's chest. Ellie appeared beside them. Her small hand reached out, stroked Biscuit's ear. Good girl, Ellie said. Good dog. Ruth looked up at Sam. He was watching them with an expression she couldn't read. Wonder, maybe, or gratitude, or just the overwhelmed exhaustion of a man who'd fought for his family and won. Marry me, Ruth said. Sam blinked. I thought I was the one who proposed. You did, but I ain't heard you ask proper. Despite the blood, the pain, the bodies, the danger still lurking somewhere in the trees, Sam smiled. He knelt down beside her right there on the porch in the snow and the morning light. Ruth McAllister, he said. Will you marry me? Yes. Ellie clapped her hands. Biscuit barked. Moses muttered something about damn fool romantics and went back inside. Ruth pulled Sam close and kissed him, and for one perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. They buried the dead men at the edge of Ruth's property, unmarked graves in frozen ground. Moses said words over them, not kind words but proper ones. Even killers deserved something, he said, even men who'd chosen wrong. The third man never came back. Maybe he'd died in the snow. Maybe he'd run far enough that coming back didn't seem worth the risk. Ruth didn't know, and after a while she stopped caring. What mattered was that her family was safe. What mattered was that Ellie was talking again more every day, her voice returning like spring after a long winter. What mattered was that Sam stayed. Not one more day, not another after that, forever. The word felt strange in Ruth's mind. She'd stopped believing in forever the day she buried her first baby. But watching Sam repair her fence, watching Ellie chase the chickens, watching Biscuit limp after them both with tired determination, maybe forever was possible after all. Moses left after a week. Got my own place to tend, he said. But I'll be back. Check on you folks. He paused at the edge of the clearing. You done good, Ruth. Your daddy would be proud. You knew him. Knew of him. Good man. Fair man. Moses tipped his hat. You take after him. He walked into the trees and disappeared. Ruth watched him go, something warm spreading through her chest. She wasn't alone anymore, and she never would be again. That night, after Ellie fell asleep, Sam and Ruth sat together on the porch. The stars were out. The air was cold. But Ruth was warm, tucked against Sam's side, his arm around her shoulders. I've been thinking, Sam said. Dangerous habit. He smiled. About what you said. Growing old together. Grandchildren. You're not backing out on me, are you? No. Just... He turned to look at her. I can't give you what you lost, Ruth. The babies. I can't replace them. I'm not asking you to. I know. But I want you to know. His voice caught. Ellie's not the only one you've saved. You saved me too. Gave me a reason to stop running. A reason to fight. A reason to live. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. I didn't save you, she said. I just opened a door. That's the same thing. Sam pressed his forehead to hers. That's exactly the same thing. They sat together in the silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. And Ruth thought about doors, about choices, about the small moments that change everything. A knock in a blizzard, a child with blue eyes, a man carrying too much pain and too much love and nowhere safe to put any of it. She'd opened her door to strangers, and they'd become her family. She'd given up her solitude and gained everything she'd ever wanted. She closed her eyes and listened to Sam's heartbeat and smiled. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. 2 weeks passed like a held breath. Ruth's shoulder healed slowly, the stitches pulling whenever she moved too fast. Sam wouldn't let her lift anything heavier than a coffee cup, which drove her half mad with frustration. But she couldn't deny the tenderness behind his stubbornness, the way his eyes tracked her every wince, every grimace. Ellie's voice returned in pieces. Single words at first, then fragments of sentences, then whole thoughts that tumbled out like water through a broken dam. She talked to Biscuit mostly long, rambling conversations about nothing and everything, her small voice filling the cabin with sounds Ruth had never known she needed. "Mama, Ruth," Ellie said one morning, tugging at Ruth's sleeve. "The chickens are fighting again." "Mama, Ruth." The words still made Ruth's heart stutter every time. "Let 'em fight," Ruth said. "Chickens gotta work out their own problems." "But the brown one's being mean." "The brown one's always mean. That's just her nature." Ellie frowned, considering this. "Can't she learn to be nice?" Ruth knelt down, ignoring the pull in her shoulder. "Some creatures can learn. Some can't. The trick is knowin' which is which." "How do you know?" "You watch 'em. See what they do when they think nobody's looking. That's when you see who they really are." Ellie nodded solemnly, storing this wisdom away, like she stored everything Ruth told her. Then she ran off to watch the chickens with new purpose, Biscuit limping behind her. Sam appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. "You're good with her." "She's easy to be good with." "No, I mean—" He paused, searching for words. "Clara was a wonderful mother, patient, kind, but you're different. You're teaching her things Clara never could. How to be strong, how to survive." Ruth stood wincing. "Survivin' ain't something you teach. It's something that gets beaten into you." "Maybe, but she needs both, the softness and the steel." Sam handed her the coffee. "You give her both." Ruth sipped the bitter brew and watched her daughter chase chickens in the yard. Her daughter. The word felt right now natural as breathing. "I never thought I'd have this," she said quietly. "Have what? Easy. Any of it. A man who looks at me like I'm worth something. A child who calls me mama. A reason to get up in the morning that ain't just spite and stubbornness." She turned to face him. "You gave me that, Sam. You and Ellie." "You gave it to yourself. We just knocked on the door." Ruth smiled. "Best knock I ever heard." Sam leaned in to kiss her soft and slow. The sound of hoofbeats shattered the moment. Ruth's coffee cup hit the ground. Sam was already moving, grabbing the rifle from beside the door. Ruth pulled Ellie back from the yard, pushed her toward the cabin. "Inside. Now." "Mama!" "Now, Ellie." The child ran. Biscuit followed, hackles raised. Ruth retrieved her own rifle, the one Moses had left behind. Her shoulder screamed in protest, but she ignored it. Pain was temporary. Dead was forever. A single rider emerged from the tree line. Not the third bounty hunter, this one was too old, too well dressed. A suit coat under his heavy winter cloak. A hat that cost more than Ruth's entire cabin. He rode slowly, hands visible, no weapon drawn. Sam's rifle didn't waver. "That's close enough." The rider stopped, raised his hands higher. "Samuel." His voice was cultured Eastern. "Put down the gun, son. I'm not here to fight." Ruth's blood went cold. "Son?" Sam's face had turned to stone. "I ain't your son, not anymore. You'll always be my son, no matter how far you run." The rider's eyes swept over the cabin, the yard, the woman standing beside Sam, with a rifle and fire in her eyes. "Is this what you left everything for, a shack in the wilderness? This is my home. Your home is in Denver. Your home is the estate your mother built. Your home is the life you were born to lead." That life got Clara killed. The rider flinched, first crack in his composure. "That was a tragedy, but hiding won't—" "Hiding?" Sam took a step forward, rifle still raised. "I ain't hiding, Father. I'm protecting what's left of my family, something you never understood." Ruth's mind raced. Father. This man was Sam's father, the railroad baron, the wealth and power Sam had walked away from. Who is she? The older man's gaze fixed on Ruth. Not hostile exactly. Assessing, like he was calculating her value. None of your concern. Everything about you is my concern. I've spent 18 months tracking you across 3 territories. I've paid off sheriffs and bribed telegraph operators and hired Pinkerton men to find you. His voice hardened. Do you know how much you've cost me? I don't care. The board is asking questions, Samuel. Your absence has created instability. Stock prices are falling. Investors are nervous. The rider leaned forward in his saddle. I need you back. The answer's no. You haven't heard my offer. Don't need to. The answer's no. Ruth watched the exchange, her rifle growing heavy in her hands. She could see the family resemblance now, same jaw, same eyes, same stubborn set to the shoulders. But where Sam carried warmth beneath his hard exterior, his father seemed carved from ice all the way through. And the child, the older man asked. Eleanor belongs in proper society, proper schools, not— He gestured dismissively at the cabin. This. Eleanor belongs with me. You can barely keep yourself alive. What kind of future can you offer her out here? A free one. The older man's eyes narrowed. Freedom, is that what you call it? Living in poverty, hiding from your own name, dependent on the charity of— His gaze cut to Ruth again. Whoever this woman is— Ruth stepped forward. I ain't charity. I wasn't speaking to you. You are now. She lifted her chin, met his cold eyes without flinching. My name's Ruth McAllister. This is my land, my cabin, my home. Your son and granddaughter are here because I invited them, and they'll stay as long as they want. How much? Ruth blinked. What? How much will it take to make you go away? Everyone has a price. He reached into his coat, pulled out a leather wallet. 10,020. Name your figure. Ruth's finger tightened on the trigger. Get off my land. 30,000. That's more money than you'll see in a lifetime. I said get off my land. Sam stepped between them. She's not for sale, Father. Neither am I. Neither is Ellie. Don't be a fool. This woman is obviously after your inheritance. The moment she found out who you really were. She didn't know. Sam's voice cracked like a whip. She took us in when she thought we were penniless drifters. She gave us her food, her blankets, her mama's quilt. She nearly died protecting Ellie from the men you sent. I didn't send those men. You think I believe that the Keller brothers just happened to find us? After 18 months of running, they just happened to track us to the one place we finally felt safe. The older man's face remained impassive. I hired investigators, not killers. Same thing in the end. Your investigators talked to someone who talked to someone else. Word got out, and men came to kill my daughter. Sam's voice shook with barely contained rage. Your greed nearly murdered your granddaughter, and you have the nerve to come here and offer this woman money to leave. Silence fell, heavy, thick. Ruth watched the older man's face for some sign of remorse, some flicker of guilt. She saw nothing. Just calculation. Strategy. The offer stands, he said finally. For both of you. Come home. Resume your position. I'll settle whatever debts this woman has set her up comfortably somewhere else, and we'll forget this ever happened. Sam raised his rifle. Leave. Now, while you still can. You won't shoot me. Don't test that theory. Father and son stared at each other across the barrel of a gun. The air crackled with decades of resentment, disappointment, broken expectations. Ruth held her breath. Then the older man shook his head. You're making a mistake, Samuel. A terrible mistake. It's my mistake to make. When you change your mind, and you know where to find me. He gathered his reins. I'll give you until spring. After that, I'll take more direct measures. He turned his horse and rode away without looking back. Ruth's knees gave out. She sat down hard in the snow rifle falling from her numb fingers. Sam was beside her in an instant. Ruth, look at me. He'll come back. Her voice came out strangled. He'll come back with lawyers, with money, with power we can't fight. We'll fight anyway. Sam, look at me. He cupped her face in his hands. I chose this. I chose you, and I'll keep choosing you every day no matter what he threatens. He's your father. He's a man who values money over family, who sees people as assets to be managed. Sam's jaw tightened. Clara died because of his world, his business rivals, his enemies. I won't let that happen again. Ruth's eyes burned. What are we gonna do? Whatever we have to. He pulled her close, held her against his chest. We survived bounty hunters. We'll survive him too. Ruth wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love and stubbornness could defeat money and power. But she'd seen the look in the old man's eyes, the absolute certainty that he would get what he wanted eventually, and she was afraid. The cabin felt smaller now. Ruth stood at the stove cooking dinner she couldn't taste, listening to Ellie chatter to Biscuit about the chickens. Normal sounds, safe sounds, but they couldn't drown out the echo of the older man's voice. I'll take more direct measures. You're thinking too loud, Sam said, coming up behind her. I can hear it from across the room. Thinking about spring. Spring's months away. It'll come faster than we want. Ruth stirred the stew mechanically. What did he mean, direct measures? What can he do? Sam was quiet for a long moment. He has lawyers, politicians in his pocket, judges who owe him favors. He could take Ellie. He could try. Ruth's hand tightened on the spoon. Over my dead body. That's what I'm afraid of. Sam turned her around, made her look at him. My father doesn't lose Ruth. He doesn't accept defeat. If he wants Ellie back in Denver, he'll find a way. Then we make sure there ain't a way. We get married. I adopt Ellie legal. Make it so he can't just... That's what I've been thinking about. Sam took a breath. There's a judge in Clearwater. Honest man. Owes me a favor from before, from when I was on the bench. He could marry us. Make it official. Draw up adoption papers. Clearwater's 40 miles. I know. Through territory your father now knows we're in. I know. Sam's face was grim. But it's our best chance. Make everything legal before he can mount a challenge. Once you're Ellie's mother, in the eyes of the law, it's harder for him to claim custody. Harder, not impossible. No, not impossible. He took her hands. But it's something, a foundation to build on. Ruth looked at him. At this man who'd knocked on her door and changed everything, who'd brought danger and love and purpose into a life that had been slowly dying. When do we leave? Tomorrow, first light. And Ellie. She comes with us. I won't leave her here alone, and I won't leave her with anyone else. Ruth nodded. Then we go tomorrow. She turned back to the stove, but Sam caught her arm. Ruth, I need you to understand something. His eyes were dark serious. If this doesn't work, if my father finds a way to take Ellie, I'll fight him. In court, in the streets, with my bare hands if I have to. But I might lose. You won't lose. I might. And if I do, I need to know you'll be okay. That you'll keep going, keep living, keep... Stop! Ruth pressed her hand over his mouth. I ain't listening to this. You ain't gonna lose, and even if you did, I wouldn't be okay. I'd burn down heaven and hell both to get that child back. She removed her hand. So don't you dare ask me to be okay with losing her. Don't you dare. Sam stared at her. Something shifted in his face, relief maybe, or wonder. God, I love you, he said. Then stop talking about losing and start talking about winning. He pulled her close and held her tight, and for a moment Ruth let herself believe they had a chance. The road to Clearwater was hard, ice beneath the snow, switchbacks that made Ruth's stomach lurch, wind that cut through their heaviest coats like they were made of paper. Ellie rode with Sam bundled in blankets, while Ruth guided the second horse, the one Sam had arrived on, recovered and rested after weeks in her barn. They didn't talk much, too cold for conversation, too tense. Ruth watched the trees, watched the trail behind them, watched for any sign of riders following. Sam's father had known where to find them. Who else might know? They reached Clearwater at dusk on the second day. The town was bigger than Ruth expected. A real main street, a general store, a hotel, a courthouse that looked almost grand against the mountain backdrop. "Wait here," Sam said, helping Ellie down from the horse. "I'll find the judge." "We'll come with you." "No, if my father has people watching." "All the more reason to stay together." Ruth took Ellie's hand. "We ain't splitting up. Not now." Sam hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But stay close." They walked through town together, Ruth's rifle hidden under her coat. Ellie pressed between them like something precious. People stared. Ruth was used to stares, a woman alone, a woman with a gun. But these felt different. Curious. Assessing. The courthouse was warm inside, a fire burning in a massive stone fireplace. A clerk looked up from his desk. "Help you folks." "Judge Patterson," Sam said. "Tell him Samuel Mercer is here." The clerk's eyebrows rose. He disappeared into a back room. Minutes crawled by. Ruth's hand found Sam's squeezed tight. The clerk returned. "Judge'll see you now." They followed him through a heavy oak door into an office lined with books and papers. A man sat behind a massive desk, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. "Samuel." The judge rose, extending his hand. "It's been a long time." "Too long, Henry." Sam shook the offered hand. "I need your help." The judge's gaze swept over Ruth, over Ellie. Understanding flickered in his eyes. "I heard you'd left Denver, heard rumors about why." He gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. "Sit. Tell me what you need." Sam told him everything. The death of Clara, the running, the bounty hunters, Ruth and her cabin, his father's arrival and threats. Judge Patterson listened without interrupting. When Sam finished, the judge was quiet for a long moment. "You want me to marry you," he said finally, "and draw up adoption papers." "Yes?" "Your father won't accept it." "I know. He'll challenge the adoption, claim the mother." He nodded at Ruth. "Is unfit. Claim the marriage was coerced or fraudulent." "Can he win?" Judge Patterson studied Ruth. "Ma'am, do you own property?" "Yes. A cabin and 40 acres in the high country. Paid for free and clear." "Any debts?" "None, now." Ruth thought of Sam paying off her banknote. "None that can be held against me." "Any criminal history? Anything that could be used to question your character?" "I'm a widow. I live alone. I mind my own business and ask others to do the same." The judge almost smiled. "And you want to adopt this child, become her legal mother?" "I already am her mother." Ruth's voice was steady. "The papers just to make other folks believe it." Ellie tugged at Ruth's hand. "Mama Ruth's the best mama. She saved me from the bad men. She read me stories. She taught me about the chickens." Judge Patterson's face softened. "I don't doubt it, young lady." He turned back to Sam. "Here's what I can do. I can marry you today. I can draw up adoption papers naming Mrs. What will it be, Mercer?" "Harrison," Sam said. "Samuel Harrison? That's my real name." "Very well. I can make Ruth Harrison Eleanor's legal mother." "But Samuel, you should know your father has resources I can't match. If he brings this to federal court, brings in his own judges, I know the risks." "Do you?" Patterson leaned forward. "I'm not just talking about custody. I'm talking about your freedom. If he declares you unfit, if he gets doctors to testify, you're mentally unstable, running away with a child, abandoning your fortune, he could have you committed. Take Eleanor away and lock you in an asylum." Ruth's blood ran cold. "He wouldn't." "You don't know Edward Harrison," Patterson said grimly. "I do. He would do whatever it takes to get what he wants. And what he wants is control of that little girl and the Harrison name." Sam's face had gone pale. "Then what do you suggest?" Patterson was quiet for a moment. Fight. But fight smart. Get your story out. The sympathetic widower who lost his wife to violence, who fled to protect his daughter. The brave frontier woman who took them in, who nearly died defending a child she'd only just met. He looked at Ruth. You have a powerful story if you tell it right. Public opinion can be as strong as any law. We ain't looking for fame, Ruth said. I know, but sometimes fame is armor. Patterson stood moved to a cabinet, pulled out papers and a pen. Let's start with the marriage. The rest we can figure out as we go. Ruth looked at Sam. He looked back. You ready? He asked. Been ready since you proposed on my bloody floor. Despite everything, he smiled. They stood before Judge Patterson, hands clasped, Ellie between them, holding both their hands. The clerk served as witness. It wasn't the wedding Ruth had imagined as a girl, no white dress, no flowers, no family gathered around. But it was perfect. Do you, Samuel Thomas Harrison, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for richer or poorer, until death do you part? I do. And do you, Ruth Elizabeth McAllister, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for richer or poorer, until death do you part? Ruth looked at Sam. At his dark eyes, his scarred hands, his face that had become the first thing she wanted to see every morning, and the last thing she wanted to see every night. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. Patterson smiled. You may kiss your bride. Sam kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Ellie clapped. Does this mean we're a real family now? We were always a real family, Ruth said, kneeling down to meet her daughter's eyes. This just makes the paper pushers believe it. Patterson drew up the adoption papers next. Ruth signed her new name, Ruth Harrison, and felt something settle in her chest. A rightness, a belonging. It's done, Patterson said, handing them copies of all the documents. Guard these with your life. They're your proof, your protection. Thank you, Henry, Sam said. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over. The judge's face was grave. Stay careful, both of you. Edward Harrison doesn't accept defeat. He'll come for you one way or another. Let him come, Ruth said. Patterson looked at her. Something like respect flickered in his old eyes. You might just win this thing, he said. You might just be stubborn enough to do it. They spent the night in Clearwater at a small inn where the rooms were clean and the food was hot. Ellie fell asleep between them, exhausted from the journey, her small hands clutching the adoption papers like they were made of gold. Ruth couldn't sleep. She lay in the darkness, listening to her family breathe, thinking about everything Judge Patterson had said. About asylums and federal courts and enemies with unlimited resources. You're thinking too loud again, Sam murmured. Can't help it. He shifted, careful not to wake Ellie, and pulled Ruth closer. What's on your mind? Everything. Nothing. The future. She pressed her face against his shoulder. What if we can't win? What if he takes her? He won't. But if he does, Ruth. Sam's voice was firm. He won't. I spent 15 years as a judge. I know how the law works. I know how to fight it and how to use it. My father might have money, but I have something he doesn't. What's that? The truth, and a wife who's too stubborn to know when she's beaten. Ruth almost smiled. Flattery won't make me sleep. No, but this might. He kissed her forehead. Whatever happens, we face it together. That's what you told me. Remember? I remember. Then believe it, because I do. Ruth closed her eyes, let his warmth seep into her bones. And finally, slowly, she slept. Morning came soft and gray. They packed their things, saddled their horses, prepared for the long ride home. Ruth strapped Ellie into the saddle in front of Sam, checked the cinches twice. Ready, Sam asked. Ready. They rode out of Clearwater as the sun broke through the clouds. The papers were safe in Ruth's saddlebag next to her mother's book of poetry. Proof of who they were. Proof of what they'd built. Ruth looked back once at the town at the courthouse where she'd become a wife and mother in the eyes of the law. Then she turned forward and didn't look back again. The trail home felt shorter somehow. Maybe it was the marriage papers warming her saddlebag. Maybe it was Ellie's constant chatter restored now that danger seemed distant. Maybe it was just hope making the miles disappear. They made camp on the second night, a sheltered hollow Moses had told them about. Good water, good cover, safe as much as anywhere could be safe. Ruth cooked beans over a small fire while Sam checked the horses. Ellie sat beside her tracing letters in the dirt with a stick. Mama Ruth. Yes, sweetheart. Are we going to be okay? Ruth looked at her daughter. At those summer blue eyes, so much older than 7 years, had any right to make them. Yeah, she said. We're going to be okay. Promise. Ruth pulled her close. I promise. The fire crackled. The stars wheeled overhead. And somewhere in the darkness, Ruth heard a sound that didn't belong. A horse, breathing. She was on her feet before she knew she'd moved rifle in hand, shoving Ellie behind her. Sam? I hear it. He was already there, pistol-drawn eyes scanning the darkness. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. A figure emerged from the tree line. Hands raised. Face shadowed. Easy now. A woman's voice. Old. Rough. Ain't here to fight. Ruth didn't lower her rifle. Who are you? Name's Agnes Whitmore. I'm a doctor. The woman stepped into the firelight, gray-haired, weathered, carrying a medical bag. Heard you folks might need some help. Sam's eyes narrowed. How'd you find us? Judge Patterson sent word. Said you were heading back to the high country. Said trouble was coming and you might need a friend. We don't know you. No, but Patterson does. And he trusts me. Agnes lowered her hands slowly. I've been patching up folks in these mountains for 30 years. I ain't never betrayed a patient yet, and I ain't about to start now. Ruth studied the woman. Something in her eyes, steady no-nonsense, reminded Ruth of her own father. What kind of help? Ruth asked. The medical kind. Word is Mrs. Harrison here took a bullet a few weeks back. Also word is it was stitched up by a well-meaning amateur. Agnes nodded at Ruth's shoulder. I'd like to take a look. Make sure it's healing proper. Ruth's shoulder had been aching for days. She'd told herself it was fine. She'd told herself a lot of things. How do we know Patterson really sent you? Agnes reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope. Handed it to Sam. He opened it. Read. His shoulders relaxed by a fraction. It's his handwriting. His seal. He looked at Ruth. She's telling the truth. Ruth hesitated. Then she lowered the rifle. All right, doctor. You can look. But any funny business. You'll shoot me. Yes, I gathered that. Agnes almost smiled. Fierce. I like it. She knelt beside Ruth, unwrapped the bandages with practiced hands. Ruth hissed as cold air hit the wound. Infected, Agnes said calmly. Not bad, but it needs cleaning. Real cleaning, not whatever frontier remedy you've been using. I used whiskey. Whiskey's fine for drinking, not so fine for wounds. Agnes was already pulling supplies from her bag. This is going to hurt, but you strike me as someone who can handle pain. Get on with it. Agnes cleaned the wound, applied something that burned like hellfire, stitched what needed restitching. Ruth gripped Sam's hand and didn't scream, though she wanted to. When it was over, Ruth felt strangely better. Lighter, like poison had been drawn from her blood. You'll live, Agnes said, repacking her bag. Keep it clean. Change the bandage daily. No heavy lifting for at least another week. I've got a farm to run. You've got a husband to run it for you. Agnes stood, brushed off her knees. And a daughter who needs you alive more than she needs you capable of lifting hay bales. Ruth's throat tightened. You know about Ellie. I know about everything. Patterson told me the whole story. Agnes's weathered face softened. You've got a good man there, Mrs. Harrison, and a sweet child. Don't throw that away by being too stubborn to heal. Stubborn's all I know how to be. Then learn something new. Agnes turned to go. I'll check on you in a week or two. Try not to get shot again before then. She disappeared into the darkness as quietly as she'd come. Ruth stared after her. Sam put his arm around her shoulders, the uninjured one. Patterson's a good friend, he said. Seems like. Ruth leaned into him. You trust her? I trust Henry's judgment, and she could have hurt you just now if she wanted. Instead, she helped. Fair point. Ruth looked down at her freshly bandaged shoulder. I guess we've got a doctor now, too. We've got a lot of things we didn't have before. Ruth thought about that, about Moses and Agnes, about Judge Patterson and his papers, about the community slowly forming around them like sediment turning to stone. Think it'll be enough, she asked, to beat my father, to survive. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he kissed her temple. It has to be, he said. Because I ain't losing you. Not now. Not ever. Ruth closed her eyes and let herself believe it. For tonight, at least she would believe. Spring came late that year, but when it arrived, it transformed the mountain into something Ruth barely recognized. Wildflowers erupted across the meadow. The creek swelled with snowmelt, roaring past the cabin with a sound like applause. Ellie spent hours chasing butterflies, her laughter echoing off the ridges, filling the silence Ruth had lived with for so long. 3 months since the wedding. 3 months of waiting for Edward Harrison to make his move. Ruth had almost convinced herself he'd given up. She should have known better. The rider came at dawn just as Ruth was finishing the morning milking. She heard the hoofbeats before she saw him, dropped her pail, and ran for the cabin. Sam? He was already at the door, rifle in hand. Ellie behind him, eyes wide. Inside, he said. Both of you. I ain't hiding. Ruth, please. Something in his voice stopped her. Fear, yes, but something else too. Resignation. She took Ellie's hand and pulled her into the cabin. Watched through the window as a young man in a fancy coat rode into the yard. Not a threat, a messenger. Sam lowered his rifle, walked out to meet the rider. Ruth couldn't hear what they said, but she saw Sam's face change as he read the paper the messenger handed him. Saw the color drain from his cheeks. The rider left. Sam stood motionless in the yard, staring at the paper like it might burst into flames. Ruth went to him. What is it? He handed her the document without speaking. Legal summons. Federal Court, Denver. Custody hearing for Eleanor Marie Harrison. Petitioner Edward Thomas Harrison. Ruth's hands started to shake. He's doing it, she whispered. He's really doing it. I told you he would. But we have papers. We have the adoption. He's challenging it. Claims it was fraudulent. Claims I wasn't mentally competent to consent. Sam's voice was hollow. He's got doctors willing to testify I suffered a breakdown after Clara's death. That I kidnapped my own daughter. That's a lie. Doesn't matter. He's got money to make lies sound like truth. Sam finally looked at her. His eyes were red. The hearing's in 3 weeks. If we don't show up, we lose by default. If we do show up, we fight. We fight against his lawyers, his judges, his bought witnesses. Sam's jaw tightened. Ruth, I don't know if we can win this. We have to try. If we lose, they'll take Ellie. They might take you too for harboring a fugitive. He grabbed her hands. I can't let that happen. I can't. Stop. Ruth squeezed his fingers hard enough to hurt. Stop talking like we've already lost. We ain't lost nothing yet. You don't understand what he's capable of. I understand exactly what he's capable of. I also understand what I'm capable of. She lifted her chin. I didn't survive 3 years alone on this mountain to give up now. I didn't take a bullet for that little girl to hand her over to a man who sees her as property. Ruth, we go to Denver. We face his lawyers. We tell the truth about who we are and what we've built. Her voice hardened. "And if that ain't enough, we burn the whole damn courthouse down before we let him win." Sam stared at her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then something shifted in his face. The defeat that had been settling there lifted, replaced by something fiercer. "You mean that?" "Every word. You'd risk everything. Prison, your land, your life. I'd risk more than that." Ruth held his gaze. "She's my daughter Sam, ours, and I ain't letting anyone take her away." Sam pulled her close, held her so tight she could feel his heart pounding against her chest. "God help anyone who stands in your way," he murmured. "God help them," Ruth agreed. "Because I won't." They left for Denver 3 days later. Moses came down from his ridge to watch the cab and the animals. Agnes promised to check on him, make sure the old man didn't push himself too hard. "You come back here," Moses said, gruff as always. "This mountain needs you." "We'll be back," Ruth promised. "With Ellie, no matter what." Moses nodded. Something that might have been emotion flickered across his weathered face. "Give 'em hell, girl." Ruth kissed his cheek. First time she'd ever done that. First time anyone had maybe in decades. "Count on it." The road to Denver was long and hard. Ruth had never been to a real city before. The noise hit her first, the constant thunder of hooves and wheels and voices. Then the smell, smoke and manure and something chemical she couldn't name. Then the sheer press of humanity, more people in one block than she'd seen in her entire life. Ellie clung to her hand, overwhelmed. "It's all right, sweetheart," Ruth murmured. "It's just noise. Can't hurt you." "I don't like it." "Me neither, but we won't be here long." Sam led them through the chaos to a boarding house on a quiet street. Clean rooms, decent food, a landlady who asked no questions and expected no answers. "Rest tonight," Sam said. "Tomorrow we meet with my lawyer." "You have a lawyer?" "Patterson arranged it. Man named Thomas Blackwood. Best in the territory, he says." "Best costs money." "I have money." Sam's face was grim. "My father didn't take everything when I left. I have accounts he doesn't know about. Enough to fight him." Ruth nodded slowly. "Then we fight." Thomas Blackwood was not what Ruth expected. She'd imagined someone slick, polished, full of fancy words and empty promises. What she got was a rumpled man in his 50s with ink-stained fingers and eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Harrison." He shook her hand firmly. "Judge Patterson speaks highly of you." "He's a good man." "He is. Which is why I took this case." Blackwood gestured to the chairs in front of his cluttered desk. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." He laid out the situation with brutal honesty. Edward Harrison had hired 4 lawyers, including a former state Supreme Court justice. He had doctors ready to testify to Sam's mental instability. He had witnesses who would swear Ruth was a fortune hunter who had manipulated a grieving widower. "It's going to be ugly," Blackwood said. "He'll attack your character, Mrs. Harrison, your poverty, your lack of education, the fact that you lived alone for years unmarried. In polite society, that makes you suspect. I ain't never cared what polite society thinks. You'll have to care now. The judge will be watching how you present yourself, how you speak, how you react under pressure." "I can handle pressure." "I don't doubt it. But can you handle being called a whore in open court?" Ruth's hands fisted in her lap. Sam made a sound of protest. "I'm not trying to be cruel," Blackwood said. "I'm trying to prepare you. Edward Harrison will say anything to win. His lawyers will paint you as a desperate woman who seduced a vulnerable man for his money. They'll suggest impropriety. They'll question whether Ellie is safe in your care." "That's a lie." "Of course it is. But lies repeated often enough start to sound like truth." Blackwood leaned forward. "Our best defense is your story. The real story. The widow who took in strangers during a blizzard. The woman who nearly died protecting a child she'd only just met. the mother Ellie chose for herself. "Ellie can't testify," Sam said. "She's 7 years old." "Actually, she might be our strongest weapon." Blackwood steepled his fingers. "Judges in custody cases often want to hear from the child, what she wants, who she feels safe with. If Ellie can articulate her feelings clearly—" Ruth's stomach dropped. "You want to put her on the stand." "I want to give the judge every possible reason to rule in your favor, and a child begging to stay with her mother is very compelling. She barely spoke for 18 months. She's just starting to heal." "I understand your concern, but consider the alternative." Blackwood's voice was gentle but firm. "If we lose, Edward Harrison takes Ellie back to Denver, back to the world that killed her mother, back to a man who sees her as a chess piece in his empire." Ruth closed her eyes, saw Ellie's face, those summer blue eyes finally starting to shine again. "Let me talk to her," she said. "Let me explain what's happening. If she wants to speak, she'll speak. If she don't, we find another way." "Fair enough?" Blackwood nodded. "Now let's discuss strategy." They talked for hours. Witnesses they could call, evidence they could present, ways to counter Edward Harrison's attacks. By the time they left Blackwood's office, Ruth's head was spinning. "You all right?" Sam asked. "No." Ruth took a shaky breath. "I'm scared as hell." "Me too. But we're still doing this." "We're still doing this." They walked back to the boarding house in silence, hands intertwined. That night, Ruth sat with Ellie on the narrow bed. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important." Ellie looked up from the picture she was drawing. Biscuit, Ruth realized, the old dog surrounded by flowers. "What is it, Mama Ruth? You know why we came to Denver, right? You know about the hearing." Ellie's face clouded. "The bad man. Pa's father. He wants to take me away." "That's right. But we're going to fight him. We're going to tell a judge why you belong with us." "Okay." "The thing is," Ruth took a breath, "the lawyer says it might help if you talk to the judge too. Told him how you feel, what you want." Ellie's hand stopped moving. The crayon hovered over the paper. "I have to talk in front of people." "Only if you want to. Nobody's going to make you do anything you don't want to do." Ruth cupped her daughter's face. "But I need you to understand what's at stake. If we lose, you go back to Denver. You live with your grandfather. You might not see me or your pa again." Ellie's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to go. I want to stay with you." "I know, baby. I know." Ruth pulled her close. "That's what we're fighting for. But the judge needs to hear it from you. Needs to see that you're happy, that you're safe, that you chose us." "I did choose you." Ellie's voice was fierce, stronger than Ruth had ever heard it. "You're my mama, my real mama." "Then tell that to the judge. Tell him exactly what you just told me." Ellie was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it. For you. For our family." Ruth held her daughter and didn't let go until Ellie fell asleep in her arms. The courthouse loomed like a granite giant. Ruth stood at the base of the steps, heart hammering Ellie's hand in hers. Sam stood on Ellie's other side, his face set in the calm mask she recognized from their first days together. The mask of a man preparing for battle. "Ready?" he asked. "No, let's go anyway." They climbed the steps together. The courtroom was smaller than Ruth expected, wood-paneled and hushed. Benches filled with spectators, reporters with notebooks, curious onlookers who'd heard about the case. And there at the front sat Edward Harrison. He looked older than Ruth remembered, grayer, but his eyes were the same, cold and calculating as they swept over her, over Ellie, dismissing them both. Beside him sat 4 lawyers in expensive suits. Beside them, a row of witnesses Ruth didn't recognize. Their own table seemed pitiful by comparison. Just Blackwood, Sam, Ruth, and Ellie. David against Goliath. Except Ruth wasn't sure they even had a slingshot. All rise, the bailiff called, the Honorable Judge Marcus Whitfield presiding. Everyone stood. A door opened. A man in black robes entered, silver-haired and stern-faced. Ruth's stomach dropped. She didn't know this judge, didn't know if he was honest or bought, didn't know if he'd see them as people or problems. Judge Whitfield settled into his chair. Be seated. We're here in the matter of Harrison versus Harrison petition for custody of the minor child, Eleanor Marie Harrison. He looked at Edward Harrison's table, then at theirs. His expression gave nothing away. Mr. Pemberton, you may begin. Edward Harrison's lead lawyer stood, tall, silver-tongued, radiating confidence. Your Honor, this is a simple case. A father grieving the loss of his wife suffered a mental breakdown. In his confused state, he fled his home with his minor daughter, abandoning his responsibilities and exposing the child to danger and deprivation. Ruth's nails dug into her palms. The petitioner, Edward Harrison, seeks only to protect his granddaughter, to provide her with the education, stability, and opportunities she deserves. Opportunities that He glanced at Ruth with barely concealed contempt. Frontier widow of limited means cannot possibly provide. Pemberton went on for nearly an hour, painting Sam as unstable, Ruth as a predator, their marriage as a fraud designed to steal Ellie and the Harrison fortune. By the time he finished, Ruth wanted to vomit. Blackwood rose slowly. He didn't have Pemberton's polish, but he had something else. Something steady and unshakable. Your Honor, opposing counsel has presented a compelling fiction. Allow me to present the truth. He laid out their story. The blizzard, the knock on the door, a woman who had every reason to turn away strangers, but didn't. Ruth McAllister now. Ruth Harrison saved this child's life, not once but twice. The first time when she took her in from a storm that would have killed her. The second time, when bounty hunters came to the cabin and Mrs. Harrison threw herself between a gun and a 7-year-old girl. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The reporters scribbled furiously. She was shot, Blackwood continued. Nearly died, and her first thought upon waking was not for herself but for Eleanor, for the child who had started calling her Mama Ruth. He turned to face the gallery, the judge, the world. This is not a case about money or mental stability. This is a case about love, about who loves this child, about who has sacrificed for her, bled for her, fought for her. His voice dropped. And about who sees her as a person versus who sees her as property. Edward Harrison's face reddened. Pemberton half rose from his chair. Objection. Inflammatory. Overruled. Judge Whitfield's voice was sharp. Continue, Mr. Blackwood. The petitioner claims to want what's best for Eleanor, but I ask you, Your Honor, what has he done to demonstrate that? Has he visited her, written to her, made any attempt to understand what she's been through? Blackwood shook his head. No. Instead, he sent investigators who led killers to her doorstep. He threatened the woman who saved her life. He offered money to make her family disappear. He turned to face Edward Harrison directly. Is that the behavior of a loving grandfather, or of a man who cares more about his legacy than his granddaughter's happiness? The courtroom was silent. Judge Whitfield made a note on his pad. Mr. Blackwood, do you have witnesses? I do, Your Honor. I'd like to call Ruth Harrison to the stand. Ruth's legs felt like water, but she stood, walked to the witness box, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The truth was all she had. Blackwood led her through the story gently. The blizzard, the decision to open her door. The days that followed, watching Ellie thaw, watching Sam's walls come down, watching herself remember what it felt like to have something worth protecting. Then Pemberton rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Harrison, you were married before, is that correct? Yes. And your first husband died. How? Logging accident. Tree fell on him. My condolences. Pemberton's voice was silk over steel. And during your first marriage you never had children. Ruth's throat tightened. I lost 3. A ripple of sympathy moved through the gallery. Pemberton ignored it. Lost them. Can you be more specific? They didn't make it to birth. I see. So you've never actually raised a child. I'm raising one now. For 3 months. You've known Eleanor for 3 months? Pemberton smiled thinly. Do you really believe that qualifies you to be her mother? I believe love qualifies me. I believe sacrifice qualifies me. I believe the fact that she calls me mama and runs to me when she's scared qualifies me. Ruth's voice was steady now. I believe the bullet scar on my shoulder qualifies me. You're very passionate, Mrs. Harrison. But passion isn't the same as competence. Pemberton turned to the judge. This woman has no education, no resources, no experience. She lives in a shack on a mountain hours from civilization. How can she provide for a child's future? Same way my parents provided for mine, Ruth shot back. With hard work, honest love, and the knowledge that she's worth more than all the money in the world. Pemberton's smile faltered. No further questions. Ruth returned to her seat shaking. Sam took her hand, squeezed tight. You were amazing, he whispered. I was terrified. Couldn't tell. They called Sam next. He testified calmly, methodically, the lawyer in him rising to the surface. He explained Clara's death, the running the decision to seek shelter with Ruth. She didn't know who I was, he said. She thought I was a penniless drifter, and she still gave us everything she had. Her food, her home, her mother's quilt. Why didn't you tell her the truth? Blackwood asked. Because I wanted someone to see me. Not my name, not my fortune. Just me. Sam's voice cracked. And she did. She saw me. She loved me before she knew anything about the Harrison fortune. Pemberton's cross-examination was brutal. He produced doctors who testified that Sam had shown signs of mental instability after Clara's death. He suggested the marriage was a delusion, a desperate act by a broken man. Sam held his ground. I'm not broken. I'm healing. Because of Ruth. Because of Ellie. Because for the first time since Clara died, I have something worth living for. Then came the moment Ruth had been dreading. The defense calls Eleanor Harrison to the stand. Ellie stood. Her face was pale, but her steps were steady. She climbed into the witness chair so small her feet didn't touch the floor. Judge Whitfield leaned forward. Young lady, do you understand why you're here? Ellie nodded. To tell the truth. That's right. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Blackwood approached slowly, gently. Ellie, can you tell us who you live with? My pa, and Mama Ruth, and Biscuit, that's our dog, and the goats and chickens. Do you like living there? I love it. Ellie's face lit up. Mama Ruth taught me how to make soap and gather eggs. Pa's building me a treehouse, and there's flowers everywhere, and the creek sounds like music, and... She trailed off, suddenly shy. Are you happy, Ellie? Yes. Her voice was small but sure. Happier than I've ever been. And if you had to leave, if you had to go live with your grandfather in Denver... Ellie's face crumpled. No, please, I don't want to. Why not? Because... She started to cry. Because he didn't come. When Mama died. When I was hiding under the bed. He didn't come. Pa came. He saved me. And then Mama Ruth saved me again from the bad men. They're my family. They're my real family. The courtroom was silent. Even Pemberton looked uncomfortable. Judge Whitfield's voice was gentle. Is there anything else you want to say, Eleanor? Ellie wiped her eyes, looked directly at her grandfather. I don't want your big house. I don't want fancy schools. I just want my pa and my mama and my dog. Her voice broke. Please don't take them away. Please. Edward Harrison's face was stone. But Ruth saw something flicker behind his eyes. Something that might have been doubt, or might have been nothing at all. The judge called a recess. Blackwood gathered his papers. Sam held Ruth's hand so tight her fingers went numb. "It's up to Whitfield now," Blackwood said quietly. "We've done everything we can." "Is it enough?" "I don't know." He looked tired, Ruth realized. As tired as she felt. "I genuinely don't know." They waited in a small room off the main courtroom. Ruth paced. Sam sat with Ellie, murmuring reassurances. The minutes crawled by like wounded animals. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, the bailiff appeared. "Judge Whitfield is ready to deliver his ruling." Ruth's heart stopped. They filed back into the courtroom, took their seats, waited. Judge Whitfield entered. His face was unreadable. "I've considered the testimony carefully," he said. "This is not an easy case. Both parties have legitimate concerns." Ruth stopped breathing. However, the law is clear on one point: the best interests of the child must be paramount. He turned to look at Ellie, still sitting between Sam and Ruth, her small hands gripping both of theirs. "I've heard from doctors and lawyers and witnesses with impressive credentials. But the most compelling testimony came from Eleanor herself, a child who has suffered tremendous trauma, a child who by all accounts has begun to heal in the care of Samuel and Ruth Harrison." Ruth's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear. "The petition for custody is denied." The courtroom erupted. Ruth couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Eleanor will remain with her father and adoptive mother. The adoption stands. This case is closed." The gavel fell, and Ruth Harrison collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing. They left Denver the next morning before the sun fully rose. Ruth didn't want to spend another minute in that city, with its noise and smoke and memories of fear. She wanted her mountain, her cabin, her home. Ellie fell asleep against Sam's chest before they'd cleared the city limits, exhausted from the days of tension and the relief that followed. Sam held her like she might disappear if he let go. "We won," he said quietly, like he still couldn't believe it. "We won." "My father's face when the judge ruled." Sam shook his head. "I've never seen him look like that. Defeated." "He ain't defeated. Not yet." Ruth kept her eyes on the road ahead. "Men like him don't accept defeat. They just change tactics." "You think he'll try again?" "I think he'll try something. Question is what and when." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he shifted Ellie in his arms and reached for Ruth's hand. "Whatever he tries, we face it together." "Together," Ruth agreed. They rode on in silence, leaving the city behind, climbing back toward the mountains that had become their sanctuary. The cabin looked smaller than Ruth remembered. Or maybe she was just seeing it through new eyes. Eyes that had witnessed courtrooms and lawyers and the machinery of power. Eyes that understood for the first time how fragile their life really was. But then Biscuit came bounding around the corner barking joyfully, and Ellie slid down from the horse to throw her arms around the old dog, and Moses appeared in the doorway with something that might have been a smile on his weathered face. "You're back," he said. "We're back. And the girl? Ours, legal and proper." Moses nodded slowly. "Good." The goats missed her. Ruth laughed. First real laugh since they'd left for Denver. "I missed them too," Ellie said, already running toward the barn. "Come on, Biscuit. Let's go see the babies." Ruth watched her go, heart swelling. This was home. This was family. This was everything she'd spent 3 years alone, believing she'd never have again. "Thank you," she said to Moses, "for watching over things." "Didn't do much. Place runs itself mostly. You trained it well." "Still, thank you." Moses grunted, looked away, but Ruth saw the emotion he was trying to hide. "Supper's at 6, she said. "If you want to stay." "Might do." He walked off toward his horse, but Ruth noticed he didn't mount up. Just stood there, watching Ellie play with the goats, a softness in his old eyes that she'd never seen before. They were building something here. Something bigger than just the three of them. A family, yes, but also a community. A network of broken people who'd found each other in the wilderness and decided to hold on. Ruth pressed her hand against her stomach where a new kind of hope had started to grow. She hadn't told Sam yet, hadn't told anyone, but she knew, had known for weeks since before they left for Denver. The morning sickness, the tenderness, the strange certainty that settled into her bones. After 3 losses, she was afraid to believe, afraid to hope. But the hope was there anyway, stubborn as wildflowers pushing through snow. A month passed. Ruth's body changed in ways she remembered and ways she didn't. The sickness came and went. The exhaustion was constant. But beneath it all was a quiet joy she'd never expected to feel again. She told Sam on a warm evening in late spring, while Ellie played by the creek and the sunset painted the mountains gold. "I'm pregnant." Sam went still, completely, utterly still. "You're pregnant. About 3 months along, I figure." He stared at her. She couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if it was joy or fear or something else entirely. "Say something," she whispered. Sam pulled her into his arms, held her so tight she couldn't breathe. "Ruth." His voice was thick. "Ruth, are you sure? Sure as I can be. After everything. The babies you lost. I know." Her throat tightened. "I know the risks. I know what might happen. But I wanted you to know. I needed you to know." Sam pulled back, cupped her face in his hands. His eyes were wet. "We'll get Agnes. Have her check you over. Make sure everything's all right. I was planning to. And you'll rest. No heavy lifting. No." "Sam." Ruth took his hands, squeezed them. "I've done this before. I know what I need to do. But last time I was alone. This time I've got you." She managed to smile. "This time is different." Sam searched her face, looking for doubt, finding only determination. "You really think this baby will make it?" Ruth pressed his hand against her belly. "I don't think. I know. I can feel it. This one's a fighter, Sam. Like her mama. Just a feeling." Sam let out a shaky breath. Then he smiled, bright and real and full of a joy Ruth had never seen on his face before. "A baby. We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He kissed her. Soft at first, then deeper, full of promise and fear and overwhelming love. When they finally broke apart, Ellie was standing a few feet away, watching them with curious eyes. "What's happening?" she asked. Ruth held out her hand. "Come here, sweetheart. We have something to tell you." Ellie approached. Slowly, took Ruth's hand. Sam knelt down to be at her level. "Ellie, how would you feel about being a big sister?" The girl's eyes went wide. "A sister, you mean? A baby?" "A baby," Ruth confirmed. "Growing right here in my belly." Ellie's face transformed. Wonder, excitement, and something else. Something tender and protective. "Can I feel?" Ruth guided her small hand to her stomach. There was nothing to feel yet, not really, but Ellie pressed her palm flat and closed her eyes. "Hello, baby," she whispered. "I'm your big sister, Ellie. I'm going to teach you everything. How to feed the goats and gather eggs and find the best flowers." She paused. "Don't worry. Mama Ruth and Pa will take good care of you. They took care of me." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Ellie close, held her tight. "We're going to be a real family," Ellie said against Ruth's shoulder. "A mama, a pa, a big sister, and a baby. That's a real family." "That's a real family," Ruth agreed, and for the first time in her life, she believed it. Agnes came the next day. She examined Ruth with practiced hands and sharp eyes, asking questions, taking notes, making Ruth lie still while she listened for things Ruth couldn't hear. Finally, she sat back. "Everything looks normal," Agnes said. "Strong heartbeat, good positioning. No signs of the problems you had before. Ruth's breath caught. Really? Really? You're not out of the woods yet. Won't be until that baby's in your arms screaming its lungs out. But so far so good. She's gonna make it. Ruth's voice cracked. She's really gonna make it. I don't make promises I can't keep. But I'll say this, you're healthier than you've ever been. Stronger. Happier. Agnes's weathered face softened. That counts for more than most folks realize. Babies know when they're wanted, when they're safe. This one knows. Ruth couldn't speak, could barely breathe through the hope expanding in her chest. Now. Agnes stood all business again. Light work only. No lifting anything heavier than a milk pail. I want to see you every 2 weeks until you're further along. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you send for me immediately. I will. Good. Agnes gathered her things. Congratulations, Mrs. Harrison. You deserve this. After she left, Ruth sat alone in the quiet cabin, hands pressed against her belly, and let herself imagine. A baby. A daughter, maybe, or a son. Someone new to love. Someone who would never know the loneliness and loss that had shaped Ruth's life. This child would know only warmth, only safety, only love. Ruth closed her eyes and made a promise. Summer bloomed across the mountain. Ruth's belly swelled with the season round and firm beneath her dresses. She let Ellie feel the baby kick, watched her daughter's face light up with wonder each time. She's strong, Ellie said. Like you, Mama Ruth. Like all of us, Ruth corrected. Harrison women are fighters. Sam built a cradle from pine he'd cut himself, sanding the wood smooth, carving delicate flowers along the headboard. Ruth watched him work in the evenings, his hands sure and gentle, creating something beautiful for a child who wasn't even born yet. You're good at that, she said one night. Had a good teacher. My grandfather, before he died, taught me carpentry when I was younger than Ellie. Sam ran his hand along the wood. Never thought I'd use it like this. Life's full of surprises. Best ones I've had all came from you. He set down his tools and crossed to where she sat by the fire. You all right? You look tired. I am tired. Growing a person's hard work. Then rest. I will. Just wanted to watch you a little longer. She smiled. Wanted to remember this moment. The summer. The cradle. You with sawdust in your hair. Sam touched his hair. Found the sawdust, laughed. You're getting sentimental in your old age. I'm getting grateful. There's a difference. He knelt beside her chair, took her hand. Me too. Every day I wake up grateful. For you, for Ellie, for this baby. His voice dropped. For that night you opened your door. Best decision I ever made. Even with everything that came after the bounty hunters, my father, the court case. Everything. Ruth cupped his face. I'd do it all again. Every terrifying moment. Because it brought me here. To you. To us. Sam kissed her palm. I love you, Ruth Harrison. I love you too, Sam Harrison. Outside, Ellie's laughter rang across the meadow. Biscuit barked. The goats bleated their evening song. And Ruth smiled content in a way she'd never known she could be. The first pain came on a cold October morning. Ruth woke, gasping, hands flying to her belly. The baby had dropped lower in recent days, pressing against places that made walking uncomfortable and sleeping nearly impossible. But this was different. This was sharp and deep and terrifying. Sam. She shook his shoulder. Sam, wake up. He was alert instantly. What is it? The baby. Something's happening. He was out of bed before she finished speaking, pulling on clothes, lighting the lamp. I'll get Agnes. Don't move. I ain't going anywhere. He was out the door in seconds. Ruth heard his horse thundering down the trail, racing for Agnes's cabin 5 miles away. She lay in the darkness, hands pressed against her belly, breathing through the waves of pain that rolled over her. It's all right. She whispered to the baby. "We're all right. We're gonna get through this. Your papa's bringing help." Another contraction. Stronger. Ruth bit down on her knuckle to keep from crying out. Ellie appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Mama Ruth? What's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart. The baby's coming, that's all." "Coming now. Now." Ruth managed a smile. "Can you be my helper? Get some water boiling. Find the clean cloths I set aside." Ellie nodded, suddenly serious. "I can do that." She ran off, and Ruth heard her moving through the cabin, following instructions she'd never been given, but somehow understood. 7 years old, Ruth thought. 7 years old, and already stronger than most grown women. The hours blurred together. Agnes arrived with the Dawn Sam close behind her. The doctor took one look at Ruth and started issuing orders. "Boil more water. Get more light. You, Mr. Harrison, either sit down and stay out of my way, or go outside and wear a hole in the ground." Sam chose to stay, taking Ruth's hand, letting her squeeze until his fingers went white. The labor was hard, harder than Ruth expected. She'd never made it this far before, never felt this particular pain. It tore through her in waves, each one stronger than the last. "Push," Agnes commanded. "Come on, Ruth, push." Ruth pushed, screamed, pushed again. "I can see the head. One more, Ruth. One more big push." Ruth gathered everything she had left, every ounce of stubbornness and determination and love. She pushed, and the baby came into the world red and wrinkled and perfect. "It's a girl," Agnes said, and Ruth heard something like wonder in the old doctor's voice. "A healthy baby girl." The cry came next, strong and loud and outraged, announcing to the mountain that she had arrived. Ruth reached for her, couldn't speak, could barely see through her tears. Agnes placed the baby in her arms. She was so small, so impossibly small. But her eyes were open, dark and curious, already looking around at this new world she'd entered. "Hello," Ruth whispered. "Hello, my love. I've been waiting for you." The baby's tiny hand found Ruth's finger, gripped it tight, and Ruth's heart, which she'd thought was already full, expanded to hold one more. They named her Hope. Sam suggested it, and Ruth didn't argue. It was the only name that made sense. Hope for the future, hope after so much loss. Hope that had taken root in Ruth's heart that blizzard night, and finally bloomed into something real, and breathing, and alive. Hope Harrison. Born October 15th, 1882, on a mountain in Montana, to parents who'd found each other against all odds. Ellie was besotted from the first moment. "She's so tiny," she whispered, peering into the cradle. "Was I ever this tiny?" "Smaller, probably," Sam said. "You were early. Came before anyone was ready for you. And now she's here. My sister." Ellie reached down, let Hope grip her finger. "Hi, Hope. I'm Ellie. I'm going to teach you everything, starting with the goats." Ruth laughed, then winced. Everything still hurt, but it was a good hurt, a healing hurt. Plenty of time for goats later. Let her get used to breathing first. "Fine, but the chickens are next." The weeks that followed were a blur of feeding and crying and sleepless nights. Ruth had never worked so hard in her life, but she'd also never been so happy. Hope was a good baby, alert and curious, tracking faces with her dark eyes, already learning the voices of her family. She cried when she was hungry, and slept when she was full, and seemed utterly content with the world she'd entered. "She's got your stubbornness," Sam said one evening, watching Ruth nurse their daughter by the fire. "Good, she'll need it. And your eyes. Your chin, though, that Harrison chin." Sam smiled. "Poor kid." "She's perfect." Ruth looked down at her daughter, at the tiny face that held pieces of everyone she loved. Absolutely perfect. Moses came to see the baby a week after she was born. He stood in the doorway, awkward and uncertain, until Ruth waved him inside. "Come look, she won't bite." Moses approached the cradle like it might explode, peered down at the sleeping infant. Small, he said. Babies usually are. She'll get bigger. That's the plan. Moses was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Made this. For her. Don't know if it's any good. Ruth unwrapped the cloth and found a tiny wooden horse carved with surprising skill. Simple but beautiful, with a flowing mane and proud stance. Moses. Ruth's throat tightened. It's wonderful. Learned to carve in the war, helped pass the time, haven't done it in years. He shrugged, embarrassed. Thought she might like it when she's older. She'll love it. Ruth set the horse beside the cradle where Hope could see it when she woke. Thank you. Moses grunted, looked away. But Ruth saw him smile just for a second before his usual gruffness returned. Gotta go. Things to do. Supper's at 6, if you want. Might do. He left, but Ruth knew he'd be back. He always was now, part of their strange extended family. Winter came gently that year. The first snow fell in late November, soft and quiet, blanketing the mountain in white. Ruth stood at the window, Hope in her arms, watching the flakes drift down. Look, she whispered. Your first snow. Hope blinked at the bright world outside, making soft sounds of wonder. Ellie pressed her nose against the glass. Can we build a snowman tomorrow? If there's enough snow. There's always enough snow up here. Ellie grinned. We can make one for Hope. A baby snowman. I think she'd like that. Sam came up behind Ruth, wrapped his arms around both her and Hope. What are we looking at? Snow. Our daughter's first snow. First of many. Sam pressed a kiss to Ruth's temple. Many, many more. Ruth leaned back against him, feeling his warmth, his strength, his steady presence. Behind them the fire crackled. Ellie chattered about snowmen and snow angels and all the winter adventures awaiting them. And Ruth thought about doors, about the one she'd opened a year ago on a night just like this, when the wind howled and the snow fell and 3 desperate knocks had changed everything. She'd been afraid that night, afraid and alone and ready to give up. Now she stood surrounded by love. A husband who would die for her. 2 daughters who filled her days with laughter and purpose. Friends who showed up with carved horses and medical advice. And the quiet loyalty that was more precious than gold. A family. She'd opened her door to strangers in a storm. They'd walked in and never left. And she had become whole. The knock came that night. Ruth's heart stuttered, old fear surging before she could stop it. But Sam was already at the door, rifle in hand. Who is it? Telegram, a voice called. From Denver. Sam opened the door. A young writer stood there, shivering a paper in his outstretched hand. Sam took it, read it. His face went still. What is it? Ruth asked Hope, stirring in her arms. Sam handed her the paper. Edward Harrison deceased. Stop. Heart failure. Stop. You are named sole heir. Stop. Please contact regarding estate. Stop. Ruth read it twice, 3 times. He's dead. Seems so. And you're his heir. Everything goes to me. Sam's voice was flat. The railroad, the houses, the money, all of it. Ruth didn't know what to feel. Relief, triumph. The strange hollowness that comes when a long-feared enemy simply ceases to exist. What do you want to do? She asked. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he took the telegram from her hands, crossed to the fire, and threw it in. They watched it burn together. I don't want his empire, Sam said. I never did. But I'll take his money. Use it to build something good. A school for the children up here. A proper clinic for Agnes. A fund for families who need help getting through hard times. That's a lot of good. It's a start. He turned to face her. Is that all right? Using blood money for good? Ruth considered. Money's just money. What matters is what you do with it. And turning his fortune into something that helps people. She smiled. I think that's exactly the kind of revenge he'd hate most." Sam laughed, pulled her close, careful of the baby between them. "I love you, Ruth Harrison." "I love you too." Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, the fire burned warm. And Ruth Harrison held her daughter and her husband and watched the telegram turn to ash. The past was gone. The future was theirs. Spring returned with its usual fanfare. Wildflowers erupted across the meadow. The creek sang its eternal song. And Hope Harrison took her first steps on the cabin porch, chubby legs wobbling, arms outstretched toward her big sister. "Come on, Hope, you can do it!" Hope tottered forward, fell, got up, tottered again. Ruth watched from the doorway, heart full to bursting. "She's determined," Sam said, coming to stand beside her. "Harrison women are fighters." "That they are." Hope made it to Ellie, who scooped her up with a triumphant shout. The baby laughed, delighted with herself. "Did you see Mama Ruth? Did you see? She walked—" "I saw, sweetheart. I saw." Ruth stepped off the porch, walked into the meadow where her daughters played. Sam followed, taking her hand. They stood together in the spring sunshine, surrounded by wildflowers and birdsong and the echoes of a journey that had started with 3 desperate knocks on a winter night. "You happy?" Sam asked quietly. Ruth looked at her family, at Ellie dancing with Hope, at Biscuit gray-muzzled and slow, but still following the girls everywhere, at the cabin smoke curling from the chimney, at the mountains eternal and unchanging standing guard over everything she loved. "Happier than I ever knew I could be." "Me too." Sam squeezed her hand. "Me too." They walked through the meadow together toward their children, toward their home, toward the life they'd built from nothing but courage and love, and the simple act of opening a door. Ruth had once believed she was cursed, barren, worthless. She'd spent 3 years alone waiting to die. Then came the knock. The cowboy. The silent girl with summer blue eyes. And everything changed. Not because they saved her, though they did. Not because they loved her, though they did. But because they showed her that the story wasn't over. That the loneliness wasn't the ending. That there was always a chance to begin again. Ruth McAllister had opened her door to strangers in a storm. Ruth Harrison had found her family on the other side. And the woman who stood in that meadow, now surrounded by love, watching her daughters play in the spring sunshine, was someone new. Someone forged from loss and hope and the stubborn refusal to give up. Someone whole. Someone home. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers and pine. Ellie's laughter rang like bells. Hope babbled her first almost words. And Ruth Harrison smiled. This was her story. Not the loneliness before. Not the fear, the loss, the years of waiting. This. The love. The family. The home she'd built with her own 2 hands and a heart brave enough to open a door. This was her story. And it was beautiful.